Greetings, everyone. My name is Iryna Manukovska, and this is Make Innovation Works podcast. And today I'm pleased to host Evelyn McDonald. She's the CEO of Scottish Age and the board member of Scottish Design Exchange, and she knows pretty much about innovations in Scotland. So, Evelyn, can you please introduce yourself, tell a little bit more about your body of work?
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Iryna, and thank you very much for asking me to participate in this podcast today. So, as you say, I'm the CEO of Scottish Edge, which is the biggest business competition in Scotland. It's actually the biggest business competition in the UK. Because no other competition exists across the UK which supports businesses at the level that we do. So essentially, we run a competition twice a year. And what we're trying to do is use that competition format to identify and support early stage, high growth potential, innovative startups in Scotland, providing them with a mix of grants and loans and support to enable them to either get their business off the ground, or if they've done that already, to put money in to enable them to grow their businesses. So we attract around 400 to 450 applicants a year, and we support around 70 to 75 businesses with a budget of £3 million. The other interesting thing about Scottish Edge is that we're sort of cross-sectoral, so we don't focus on specific sectors. So we will look at everything from food and drink to life sciences to renewables to the creative industries. The important thing is that there has to be some level of innovation, some USP within that business, which will make it stand out and enable the individual, the teams driving that business, to sell their product or service, not just in Scotland, but hopefully over the border and beyond.
Amazing. And when we were preparing for this podcast, you mentioned a lot about the potential impact for Scotland itself of the innovation you're looking for, or like entrepreneurs or enterprises. So why is it so important to invest not only in innovation on like country scale, but local as well, for local communities, local cities, or local areas, or countries themselves, not just like whole region like European Union, Eastern Europe, whatever? Why it's important, to like reinvest and maybe contribute back to the local ecosystem?
No, that's a good question. So actually, primarily, the reason we do what we do is to try and have a positive economic impact in Scotland. So we're hoping that we will support businesses that can grow, and in growing then create jobs in their local areas and create quality jobs within their growing startup. And obviously those people will then be paying their taxes, and the businesses will also be utilising local services. So there's the positive aspects about that. But also we focus, one of our criteria, interestingly, at Scottish Edge, out with the traditional business criteria, is we do look at what impact the businesses will make, and we consider the impact in 4 different areas. So we look at what social impact they will have, what environmental impact. We ask them to consider the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and how they contribute to those. And then we also ask if they have implemented or are considering implementing any circular economy practices. And if they are doing that, we can then support them with achieving that within their business. So as well as the straightforward economic impacts, we're actually challenging the businesses that we work with to consider broader impacts, and actually to try and consider those from the outset so that they bake them into their DNA at the very beginning. So they start thinking about circular practices, they start thinking about their environmental impact, they start thinking about what are they contributing to their community. So a lot of it at the outset is we're asking people to think about their intentions around this, and hopefully in doing that then enables them to take the steps and continue to take the steps around impact in their business.
And why impact is as much important as revenue perspective for business ideas? for business innovations you're like investing in, not investing, granting?
Well, first of all, I think that partly one of the reasons we started considering that is because we did recognise that within the community of entrepreneurs that we were working with, that more and more of them were going into business to have an impact. They had an idea that they felt could make a difference, and that became important to them. We also started to see that investors were looking for businesses that had an impact, and also that people that were going to work with teams to run businesses were looking to see what positive impact the work they were going to be doing was having. So I think that whole idea around impact has been something that's become more of a conversation over the last few years, with many different stakeholders considering that. And so we felt that we also had an opportunity, if you like, to try and lead on that by sort of moving that conversation up and asking, the business owners themselves to start thinking about that and pointing out that actually being able to describe your impact would be positive in terms of raising money moving forward, in terms of growing your team, in terms of engaging with your consumers. So it's pointing out that importance at that early stage.
And I think it's also very important to have the right people on board. If you're early stage enterprise, you don't have a lot of money to attract talent only with a paycheck. You need to attract talent, partners, and your clients, early adopters with some idea, with something bigger than money. So maybe impact
absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. I think that if as a leader you have a vision, and it may be that it is, you want to build a product that's going to be very successful commercially. But if you can also demonstrate that in doing that, that product may in fact be incredibly useful to the customers, or it may improve their life in some way, then obviously that can be extremely positive for the people that are going to work with that business. So as well as seeing the opportunity to be part of a successful business and perhaps financially benefit from that, they can also see that they're part of a business that is doing something good, and that can make them feel good about the work that they're doing. So I think, and obviously in the early stages of a business, you often can't pay good salaries. You often don't have many, if you like, financial benefits that you can offer. So I think it's really important that you have that vision, and that if you have impact as part of that vision, then that can be extremely attractive to the people that you're going to bring on board. I mean, I think the challenge for any entrepreneur in the early stages is to create that community of people around you who are advising you, working with you, mentoring you, to actually help you to achieve your goals. And I think it's difficult to do that if you don't have a very strong vision that gets them involved and makes them feel, I really want to help you move forward.
Yeah, because today investors and mentors and like talented employees, they are all very sophisticated. You see that world is changing. You want to contribute positively to this change, and that's where impact and vision came in.
Yeah, I mean, I read actually, so I'd received an email the other day from a company that we work with, Eden Scott, who support businesses with recruitment. And they were actually talking about what are the things that attract people to work with companies. And they were saying, actually, finance is important, but it's much lower down the agenda than it used to be. It is about the other aspects of working in that business that will attract individuals to come and work with you. So I think as well as attracting investors, potentially attracting investors, I think that impact statement really does have a big difference in pulling your team towards you. And team is another thing that we look at within Scottish Edge. It's another one of our key criteria. And sometimes, people coming into our competition will say, well, I don't have a team yet, it's just me. But your team can be the advisors that are working with you. That's at the very early stage, the mentors that you've attracted to support you in that early stage. Your thoughts around who you're going to recruit when you have the funding, and being able to see that someone has thought about that they have attracted people in the early stage to advise them and support them, even if they're not paying them, I think is testament to the fact that you can see that that person has an idea and they themselves are someone that people can buy into, and therefore that makes it more likely that they will create a strong team around them when they have the finance to do so in order to take their business forward.
And last Techstar report shows that for most of the founders, access to the capital is much as important as access to other startups, access to community of people like with relevant experience, and it seems like team in broader understanding is very.
So community, I think, is really important, because I think we know that running a business can be a lonely place to be. Even if you have a team around you, if you're the one ultimately responsible for bringing in the revenue and paying everyone's salary, it can be a bit lonely at the top. So one of the things we've invested a lot in at Scottish Edge is creating a community. So our alumni, I like to think we make them feel special. As soon as they join Scottish Edge, they obviously get access to specific support as Edge winners, but also become part of the Edge community. So we do have a distinct space for them within LinkedIn. We hold social events twice a year. So we get them together in a room primarily for networking. There's usually a couple of talks from other businesses where they talk about the good as well as the bad, because I think it's always important for entrepreneurs to reflect on maybe some difficult times and what they've learned from those, because I think other entrepreneurs can learn a huge amount from that. In fact, I think one of your speakers was talking about the power of mistakes and how much you can learn from that. And we really just take the chance to get these entrepreneurs together to make connections. And that may be that from those connections can come some commercial arrangements, but more often than not, it just gives them someone at the other end of a phone who they can get in touch with to chat about a problem that they've got and how other people can solve it for them. And our LinkedIn community is like that as well. So people can put on the LinkedIn community, I'm having an HR issue. Has anyone got some advice around this? How do I deal with it? My professional HR company is saying this, but my thought is that. Anybody want to advise me? And then people can say, okay, I'll get in touch with you to chat offline about this. So I think giving our entrepreneurs access to the other entrepreneurs and the alumni has been a real strength of the Edge community. And the other thing that we try to do is make sure that we give them specific information that can be helpful to them. So we get in touch with them about opportunities we can see, events they can attend, awards they can apply for. So we try and highlight as much as possible things that can benefit them in their business. And I was telling a nice story to the team last week, which is our next alumni event is coming up in 6 weeks. And we actually have someone who runs a business that is based in Scotland and Dubai, and the entrepreneur is in Dubai. Now, we helped that entrepreneur 10 years ago, but he had got in touch with me and said, this is absolutely brilliant. I'm going to be in Edinburgh the date of the next alumni event. I can't wait to attend. And so obviously I was thrilled with that, because it meant that despite it being 10 years since that entrepreneur had won Edge, they still saw the benefit of the Edge community, and they still welcomed the opportunity to get into a room with other winners at Scottish Edge, other entrepreneurs, and share experiences.
It's amazing story of how people can empower each other just with the communication and being a part of each other's journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, I kind of based the approach we take to our alumni very much on what I could see universities achieve, because obviously, universities are brilliant at keeping, particularly in the US, at keeping in touch with their alumni, making them feel very very much part of those organisations, involving them in different ways, and often those alumni then become donors to the university and supporters to the university. So I think there is a real benefit to doing that as well. I mean, from our point of view, I would say a selfish aspect of that for me is that if I keep in touch with our alumni, they will come back and speak at events. And of course, they can tell us fantastic stories. They will judge for us because we use, in the running of the competition, we use around 45 judges from the private sector with each round of the competition. So our successful winners will come back and participate in that judging. But we also have something called the Edge Pledge, which is entirely voluntary, but it's where our winners pledge to donate 1% of what they personally make on exit back to Scottish Edge. And we've had a number of our exited winners now do that, which gives us an income stream and an opportunity to give back to all of our businesses.
And then give them also an opportunity, to have this power of supporting someone's big idea, next big thing and dream. I think it's very powerful when you understand that you can contribute to something which can be a game changer in upcoming years.
Yes, absolutely. And actually that's reflected in, so I mentioned at the outset that we give a mix of grants and loans. So when Scottish Edge was first run as a pilot for 2 years, and at that time it was only grants that were put out. But when we formed the community interest company to deliver Scottish Edge, which was when I got involved, we decided to give a mix of grants and loans. And I had a lot of naysayers at the time who said to me, you can't give loans to early stage businesses. It won't work. They won't be able to pay you back. They won't want to pay you back. They won't have the revenue to return the money to you. It's far too risky. It's not the right approach. But in fact, over we're coming up to our 10th year at Scottish Edge, and our 10th year of lending will be in January 2025. We've actually only had to write off just slightly over 7% of the overall money that we've lent. And that's despite the fact that when we lend, we don't take any form of guarantees or floating charges or anything that a bank would normally do. But the reason I believe we've had such a high return, as well as the fact that we've been very lucky and that a number of our businesses have done very well, is that we actually say to the businesses, if I was lending money to you, Iryna, I would say, Iryna, I'm not going to take any guarantees on this, but if you get this money back to me, I will be able to help another Iryna further down the line. So every pound that gets paid back goes into a revolving loan fund and then goes back out again as another loan further down the line. So it's a really strong message. That when you're paying that money back, it's not disappearing somewhere into the ether, or it's not going back into someone's pocket. It's going back into the loan fund, and another Iryna is going to benefit at some point in the future. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And it means that our clients really want to get the money back to us because they know that the pay it forward aspect is going to ensure that someone else gets the opportunity that they've had.
And when we were preparing this podcast, you mentioned that you and your team, you've done a lot of innovations in terms of how you fundraise, how you refill the fund from which you're funding and granting the projects which enter in your competition. Can you share some more examples? So you have shared this example with loan, maybe others. So maybe some other NGOs would borrow some ideas of how they can fundraise.
So innovations around fundraising in Scottish Edge. So I think probably the main one is the pledge, but also a lot of the way we fundraise is we are probably the two most successful ways. One is that we have targeted high net worth individuals in Scotland who have done well with their businesses. And again, my approach is very much, you've been successful in your business in Scotland. If you can give me some money, I can demonstrate to you, I can give you the opportunity to invest in other small businesses. And so a few years ago, we created what we called the Entrepreneurs Fund, and we targeted high net worth entrepreneurs, got them to put £100,000 each into this fund. And then I think we got to 1.1 million, and then we deployed it over a number of rounds. And then what I do is I get in touch with these entrepreneurs on a regular basis, giving them updates on the businesses, so they feel part of that business's journey and they can see how successful that business is being. Or if it's having difficulties, we're honest about that as well. And sometimes we'll say, this business is struggling a bit, let us know if you can help in any way. So keeping them in touch and making them feel part of these businesses' journey, I'm hoping that they'll continue to fund in the future. I know that some of them have been really enjoying this opportunity to kind of get back into some very small businesses right at the very outset. And another way that we fundraise is we seek sponsors for awards. So if there are specific issues, so for example, there is a real drive in Scotland to have more of a circular economy. So we do have a sponsor in Zero Waste Scotland who put funding into businesses that develop that can demonstrate real circularity and can act as case studies for other businesses. We've also got a sponsor for the creative industries who tend to be slightly underrepresented. And again, it's to demonstrate that sort of support. So those are probably the key ways outside of the pledge that we fundraise. We also work with support partners. So we have identified a legal firm, a patent attorney, an accountant, and they support us financially and work alongside us and offer. We make sure that they, as well as supporting us financially, that they give a free offer to each of our winners so that they get some benefit in engaging with these companies. So these are different ways that we've tried to fund our organisation. We are a social enterprise. We're not government supported, we're private, so we have to ensure that we ourselves as a business have to generate enough income to keep the company going and to keep the company running the competition. But my last point in that is that I do think it helps our clients when they see that we're not a government body, we're not a charity, where we are an enterprise ourselves, so that many of the challenges that our businesses are facing around generating enough, we're facing as well. Yeah. So they can sometimes say to me, well, what did you do about, what accounting software do you use? When did you start, when did you put all your HR processes in place and so on? So we're able to talk from the position of having grown a small business too.
It's a good point, because when you're running a charity or you're funded by government, it gives you certain level of flexibility and maybe security. But on the other hand, you don't have this real competition energy as you do when you run a business, social enterprise or whatever. So it's a little bit more challenging, but I think it's more sustainable, because you need to generate revenue, and revenue behind means that you really do something impactful other partners and stakeholders are interested in. So they invest in your ideas with pledge, whatever financial support.
I feel, and I mean, it's maybe a bit critical, but I think if you are a public sector organisation and you're just getting your bills paid, you can just, there's not the same challenge to innovate. I have to keep innovating, as you do in any business, because you need to keep innovating to keep your supporters engaged, to keep your stakeholders engaged, to keep people, continuing to pay you to do what you do. You have to keep innovating to get your customers to engage with you. That's the reality of running a business. And I think as a private sector-led business, that's very much the reality at Scottish Edge. If we were just doing exactly the same things we did on day one, we wouldn't still be here. So I think understanding that is helpful for our clients as well.
Necessity is a mother of invention.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And can you please share? I know that you support a lot of youngsters, I mean, younger entrepreneurs. Why it's important, and students, you have different kind of like programs, and yourself personally, you invest a lot of like time, mentorship, and effort. So why it's important to work with the younger generation, not only with someone who has some business experience?
Well, I think it's so important because I think, for a start, young people are often they are early adopters of new ideas. And often they're aware of up and coming things before other parts of the sort of the working age population. And they have energy, they have drive, they have enthusiasm. Sometimes they have a little bit of healthy ignorance. They don't quite know what they're getting into. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if they really did know, they wouldn't. But they are prepared to really go for it. And then our job is to make sure that we can bring in the experience to help them in their journey. I think it's really important to be supporting young people. And also young people do have extra challenges in business. We know that it's harder for them to raise money because they haven't got the opportunity to build up any collateral. They haven't got the experience which will enable, often investors to invest in them or banks to lend to them. So money is harder to get when you're young. So I think it's important to make sure that we are not disadvantaging young people and making some money available for them to test out their ideas. So at Scottish Edge, we have Young Edge, which is for young people aged 18 to 30. They can access up to a £15,000 grant, but it also provides a lovely stepping stone into the main competition. So, for example, I could chat about, we have a client called Callum Murray who runs a company called Manukovska. And that's around software which helps you to onboard your clients and customers. And Callum actually came to us initially for Young Edge funding, then went on to win Scottish Edge funding. We then became customers of his software because it supports us to onboard our customers. So it helps us with the due diligence we go through with each of our winners. And Callum has now built up a business in Edinburgh with over 60 staff. And last year, Tech Nation named him as one of the top, highest growth tech companies in the UK, which was lovely. So really nice to see. But nice to see that, supporting him as a young person, was perhaps, I think it was the first step in the journey that has taken him to the stage that he is now. So I think it's good to get in early to these young people as well and really encourage them to take those steps forward.
And vice versa, they can do more if they receive support at this early stage when others don't believe in their ideas.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And as I say, often people will say, you're a bit lacking in experience, but our approach to that is, well, we can give them that experience. We have that experience and we can also attract others with that experience who can support them. So, fairly recently, for example, we've been working with a business called Gloria, run by two amazing young women, actually dealing with menopause products. And we were able to connect them with someone who had worked in Boots, who had experience of exactly that space, because in their role at Boots, they had actually been asked to look at menopause products and where the opportunities were. So it's that opportunity to reach out to your network and bring the right person on board to work with a young person, I think is really important too.
Yeah, it's challenging, but it brings some energy as well. When you have a lot of experience, it can re-inspire you to start something new.
Yeah, and in terms of energy, I think one of the wonderful things about working with business is that you get vicarious joy from, their achievements. especially if you've been involved in that very early stage. So if they get in touch with you and they tell you they've just raised, as happens all the time, we hear from people to say, oh, I've raised £4 million, I've raised £11 million, I've taken on my 50th team member, then you were only involved in a tiny little part of that, but it still feels really good to have been involved in that tiny part and to actually have helped them take those steps that's ended up leading to that investment or leading to that number of staff, especially if they've remained a close part of your alumni, still come along to your events, still celebrate their wins with you. That's wonderful. And it makes it such a lovely job to do.
You're helping to start a fire, basically.
Yes. Yeah, with a little bit of money and a lot of support, that's exactly it. And obviously the nice thing for us is that we can look back over nearly 10 years of doing this now, and with the 2 pilot years and then the years that we've been operating, we've now supported 635 businesses. And so to see the size that some of those have grown to, I think our biggest business has got 350 staff now that we've supported. We had one business that exited for $400 million in the US. So it's lovely to be able to look back and see the successes, as well as just the individual successes. Some of them are only 2-3 people, but they're doing what they love and they're delivering products and services that people want. So that's a good feeling.
And tricky question here. What is like survival rate or success rate? So you've granted, I don't know, for example, 100 of enterprises, and how much of them survive during the 5-10 years? So
okay, so over the 10 years of Scottish Edge, I think 79% of the businesses are still trading. But if you look back in the early days, it's maybe, some of the earlier rounds, it's probably sitting at around 40 to 50%. It depends. Some of our rounds, I think there was, in one of our very early rounds, I think over 80% of those businesses are still trading. So I think it just depends. But overall, it's about 79% across the whole of Scottish Edge. However, that can be viewed, you can look at that in 2 ways. So first of all, you can think, brilliant, that's amazing. But we know that within that 79%, there will be some, not a very nice word, but it describes it quite well, which is zombie businesses, which are businesses where they are just plodding along from day to day and they're not really growing. And sometimes I think that's a difficult situation to be in, because if the business is washing its face, then you can feel, if it's breaking even, you can feel, well, I can keep on going with this. But if it's not growing, it's not innovating, it's not changing, my advice in that case would be release your skills and experience and go and do something else. Take up everything you've learned from that and either create something new or go into someone else's business and take your skills and experience there. So I do think in every economy there are always those types of businesses as well as those that are growing and doing really well. And we have that whole mix, in all honesty, within our network.
I think it's very powerful advice if you see that it's not growing. So maybe it's time to recuperate and start something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And then go and take all those wonderful things you've learned and do something else. But it can be difficult. I appreciate it's difficult to make that decision. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, often people just get stuck.
Yeah, and one last question. So what be maybe your advice or some, I don't know, inspiration for young entrepreneurs who are just starting their entrepreneurship journey? Like, based on your experience, you saw a lot of businesses, you saw a lot of ideas, like top number one advice.
Well, top number one advice, I think, is that we need more entrepreneurs in the world. So if you've got an idea, go for it. But I think what to do is try and become, go along to, tech meetups if you're going to go into a tech business, or, creative nights, and try and get yourself into a network and take advantage of whatever support you can get. I mean, it varies a lot from country to country, but most countries, have support for entrepreneurs, whether that's financial support or advisory support or access to networks. So take advantage of that. I mean, one thing that I always find is people in business are incredibly generous with their time. They want other people to go into business. They want other people to be successful in business. You can almost always get someone to speak to you if you reach out to them with the right ask. So I think it's go for it, but take advantage of the networks and advice that is available, so that people can help you and guide you and support you to take that step, because everyone wants more people to go into business, more people to create jobs, and more people to bring great products and services to the market.
It's a great advice, because a lot of new entrepreneurs, they do believe that their idea is so innovative that other people would like to steal it, and they're afraid to ask some help or to present this idea during meetup or creative night, and they don't have any kind of support. They don't have any partners, so they're basically stuck with the idea itself, but it's harder for them to make something out of this idea, because they don't inspire others with their vision, and it's a tricky one.
Absolutely, but I have been doing this for a long, long time, and people don't steal other people's ideas. I have seen it once in 35 years. So I think it's not a common thing that happens. I think if you are very anxious about that, then if you're speaking to a mentor, you're speaking to other people, get them to sign an NDA. I never get offended if anyone asks me to sign an NDA. I just think, well, if you want to be belt and braces about it, that's fine. I mean, obviously, it's inherent in what I do to maintain people's confidence around their business ideas. But I think most people have no problems with signing an NDA and then giving you advice. But I think usually what I would say is just talk about your idea. Also, people often get very obsessed with the technical cleverness about their idea, and they don't talk to customers about it. So I get lots of people who think they've got the best idea in the world, and we will then say, so who have you spoken to about it? They'll say, oh, well, it's confidential at this stage. And we'll say, well, but have you spoken to any customers? Do they want this thing at that price? Is it really solving a problem? How many of your customer base would actually purchase this? So we do push people to get out of their comfort zone and very much engage with their customers, with their ideas.
Ideas needs to meet reality.
Absolutely. And we've seen many ideas that people get, sadly, people get hugely excited about, but in reality, it's not solving a big enough problem for people to pay for it. And I think it might be solving a problem, and that might be clear to you and clear to your family and your friends, but is it solving a problem that people want to pay to solve that problem? And I think that's something that entrepreneurs always need to consider as well. Is it a big enough problem that you're going to put your hand in your pocket and pay out for it? So these are the conversations we're always having with our applicants.
Yeah, it's very important. Totally agree with you. And Evelyn, thank you so much for this 40 minutes of pure inspiration and wisdom. I hope everyone enjoyed, and if someone who's listening us would like to take advantage of Scottish Edge, feel free to go to Scottish Edge website and to enter the application, because they do have a lot of opportunities and powerful network of alumni, and a lot of amazing things are happening there.
Yes, and we've got a round opening next week. So from the 14th of August, you can come into round 24. with a £1.5 million prize pot and hopefully be one of our Edge winners. But thank you for inviting me along today, Iryna. It's lovely to chat to you.
Thank you so much for your time and participation, and thank you everyone who are listening us live or going to watch us later in record. And stay safe and sound, and see you on the other podcast. Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Thank you.